that was probably the biggest risk he had ever taken in business, funding this deal for this kid that's like all gas, no brakes, no knowledge. But he funded it for me. Um, and at the end of that deal, we made 30 grand.
Nick, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Kamp, over here, head of partnerships at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine an industry spotlight on experts like yourself, hear your inspiring stories, and see how you see the real estate world evolving. So today, really excited to welcome on Nick Thiele. You are Nick the Rehabber, as many know you, the founder of Nick's All Around Improvements, which congratulations on 10 plus years for that company. That is incredible, man. What an accomplishment. But you're a St. Louis area company. And you've also now built out the Rehabber experience, which is a coaching and mentorship program to help you really walk through the rehab process once you have the deal in hand. So we'll dig into all that stuff. Nick, really appreciate you taking time out of your day, man.
Hey, no worries. I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know what? I mentioned a little bit around your personal story, but could you maybe tell us how you got into real estate? Like, I'd love for you to kind of share that with our audience to start off with.
Yeah, man. So we're founded about 10 years this year.
Yeah.
So 12 years ago, I had never even had a hammer in my hand. I don't come from any sort of conventional background in business, construction, or really any of that. So back about 12 years ago, I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in my mom's basement, kind of struggling to find my purpose and my position. I ended up having a child with a lady, and that kind of, man, just flipped my switch. I grew up without a dad, and so that would kind of hit home that I knew that whenever that happened for me, I didn't know how or who or what, but I knew that I was going to be a rock star dad. I didn't really know what that meant. So once my baby was on the way, man, the switch flipped, and I went from a guy that literally wanted nothing, did nothing, desired nothing to, foot on gas. Where do we go here? So, about a month after I found out he was on the way, I got a second job. I worked 2 jobs the entire 9 months she was pregnant. After he was born, about a month later, I'm like, what now? So I tried to enroll in the military. That didn't work. So I'm like, okay, something. And I went to my mom sitting on the couch because it was a short walk. I was in her basement. And I'm like, what do I do? I do something, right? She said, well, go to be an electrician, go to trade school, see if that works. Okay. So I left. I drove up to Vatterott. I signed the financial paperwork. I had no idea, man. I had this epiphany at one point where, I found out my son was on the way. I'm sleeping on this mattress. It's late at night. I'm just like staring at the ceiling, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know nothing. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to get off this mattress. I don't know how to find a job. I mean, I come from the generation where like we would walk up and down the street filling out paper applications to get a job. And that was about the extent of my hustle was, filling out Dollar Tree applications. And that's all the hell I knew how to do, So I just followed the ball. She said electrical. I went to school. I went to school to be an electrician. I got in there with financial aid. I had the advantages of knowing exactly what not to do. So I was a horrible student my whole life. I dropped out of high school twice. I dropped out, went back, dropped out again, realized I had it right the first time and got my GED. So I knew what not to do. So when I enrolled in trade school, I did the opposite of everything I had always done my whole life. So I sat in the back. Well, in trade school, I sat in the front, right in front of the teacher. I focused on everything but what the guy that was teaching was saying. So I just switched that around, and I ignored everybody else, and I focused on only what the teacher was saying. And 18 months later, I graduated trade school with perfect attendance, with a 4.0, with honors.
Wow.
And I had found a real passion for working with my hands and figuring that kind of shit out. So I got out of electrical school. That's the only training I had at that time. And I started a handyman business. I was still working full time at, I think, like a Valvoline, again, just bouncing through kind of jobs. I started a handyman business doing anything I could. In the beginning, a lot of like mailbox installs and light switch replacements and toilets and, here and that. I would get a job. I would go home. I would watch hours of YouTube videos, watch 10 different people do the same thing. And I would literally teach myself as it progressed. Um, I got that thing pretty big. I was able to hire a guy. I was a handyman. We were working 3, 4 jobs a day, but I wanted to go farther and deeper and scale, and I started to kind of see real estate and see some guys that had real estate projects get me to work on these little pieces of the houses.
Mhm.
So I started transitioning my business more towards the big remodels. So I would do bathroom remodels now, stop taking the little handyman jobs and really aggressively hunt and competitively price the more remodel type jobs just to show people what I was capable of doing.
Mhm.
Uh, and just from there, man, it went from me and a guy to me and 2 guys to me and 3 guys to me and 4 guys to me, and at one point I had 11 guys.
Wow.
That we scaled back from that because that was a little much.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Um, but I settled with today I have 8 full-time guys, man, and I have the best team in the world. These guys care more about what they produce with their hands than anybody else that I see do this stuff. And I wouldn't trade them for the world. Some of them have been with me 6+ years. So it's been a pretty cool adventure from mom's basement mattress to where I sit today in this office talking to you.
No kidding, man. That is inspiring. Yeah, I mean, I one, it's awesome to hear like how you were able to go in there and flip that switch. And like you said, I mean, you had that mindset of being a rock star dad. Like, is there anything you learned through that process for our audience if there are people trying to make a change in their life and trying to get out there and are considering real estate as a way to do that? Like, do you have any tips on, how you were able to flip that switch and how you were able to really make that happen? Like that's pretty unbelievable you're able to do that.
Man, the switch flipped. It's hard to say that I had anything to do with that because it just changed my entire mindset. And I knew I wanted to go. And again, I just used what I had. I had no idea. Nobody taught me. Nobody taught me how to be a dad or an educator or even with the dad, right? I didn't have one. So what did I do? I used what I had to figure out what I was going to do, which is, the bad example. So same thing with my school, same thing with my job. I was the guy that wanted the most for doing the least, and I was never taught about how to be a hard worker. I was never taught, character. So I just literally used what I had, which is the worst example of what to be, and I did the opposite of that. I just took what I could pull from, and I pulled every single bit that I could. It was no laying down. It was no stopping. There was a point where like my business was slow, and I found myself like sitting at home watching TV, and then I said, no, you can't do that. This is not it. So I made myself say Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you dedicate that towards your dream, towards your business. So then I changed and I started watching YouTube videos from 9 to 5. If I had no job, I sat in front of the computer and I learned. And when I could not, like when my eyeballs started burning and I couldn't take staring at the computer anymore, I was the guy who literally took my truck with my name on it and sat in Home Depot's parking lot for an hour, just so people could see me. You're not going to see me on the couch. You're not going to pay me sitting at home.
Yeah.
So it was just anything I knew how to do. It was dangerous to stand in my way at that point in time because I was just going. And I bumped my head a lot. I failed consistently at different things that I tried, still to this day. But, failing is just one way to move an option out of the way and get on to the next option. And I just wasn't afraid to do that. I wasn't afraid to look silly. I look silly so much because I'm calling people trying to figure shit out that I have no clue about. So a lot of the beginning conversations with these people in business were like, hey, slow down. I don't know anything we're talking about right now. I'm really trying to figure this out. If you can't help me, I'm going to hang up and call somebody else. Just let me know if you can. Just really being transparent about what my position was in this game. Like, I'm here. I know nothing, but you're not going to stop me. So either help me or move on.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible mindset, man. Like, I love hearing your journey, the way that you've changed things around. I mean, I know you went through that building your own handyman business, and then how did you transition from that into doing your own deals too? Like, can you talk more about, how you became, from that to then flipping houses?
Yep. So it was all about long-term sustainability. Like I lived 10 years ahead, and I realized like I didn't want to be a handyman. I was scrambling. I was one dude with one dude working with me, and I'm scrambling to manage 3, 4 different homeowners a day and some materials for 3 different houses, and calling the next guy for tomorrow midway through the day. And then winter would come and I would get slow. So as I kind of figured it out, I see that these guys are flipping these houses, and that's what I want to do. So I have the idea, and I still don't know I want to transition away from the handyman thing yet because I just got that to work. Like I just by this time I had like quit my full-time job. I transitioned into the handyman thing. I went part-time first to see if the handyman thing would work. It did. And then when I started taking bigger jobs, I'm like, I can't have a part-time job and then still take bigger jobs. If I need to do a bathroom remodel for 3, 4 days straight, I can't say, hey, I'll be back in 2 days. I got to go work at Valvoline. So I quit. I was full-time, but then the winter times would hit and I would get so freaking slow. Nobody's putting in mailboxes, in the middle of December. So my idea, I had kind of seen the real estate thing. I had kind of seen people doing it. And again, all in, man, all gas, no brakes, not afraid to fail. So my idea was I would get a house, use that house as like an office, right? So I would get a house as a project, use that house as like an office for me and my guy. Now, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, we go to this house. We work on this house that I own. And in between, we would do the handyman thing. So, like, if I had a job on Tuesday and a job on Thursday, we'd go to the house 9 o'clock, we'd work here, we'd go off, do the handyman job at noon, come back at 1, and work some more at this house, right? That was how I was going to turn my job full time because I couldn't keep a guy if I could only employ him partially, right? I needed to be able to employ a person for 40 hours a week to actually have an employee, to actually have a business. And I didn't want to be like a dispatcher for a bunch of different skilled guys. I've never hired skilled guys. Skilled guys kind of get on my nerves. I tend to hire guys that have like a lot of character, a lot of, emotional considerations to the way that they move. You know what I mean? Respectful people, hard workers, and I'll teach them myself. I taught myself this. I'm not afraid to teach somebody else. So I was like, I'll just get a house, use it as an office, boom, and then I'll run my handyman business out of it. $1 million idea right there, So I literally had about $30,000 in the bank. I knew nothing about hard money, nothing about financing, nothing about private money, nothing about nothing. I knew at that time how to fix shit, and I had just got about that far. And I'm like, well, if I get a house, I can fix shit. So I had $30,000 in the bank, and I was like, I'm just going to take all that. I can get a house, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to fix it. I had a couple credit lines I figured I'd use to pay for the repairs, things like that. So I literally Googled St. Louis best real estate agent, and I started calling numbers off the internet and going through the same spiel. My name's Nick. I know nothing. This is what I want to do. Are you going to work with me? Can you help me? So found a guy who said he was going to help me. I was bugging these guys every other day. Hey, got anything yet? Hey, got anything yet? Hey, anything out there? I'm on multiple MLS emails. Finally, I think I bugged this guy enough. A couple ladies had reached out to him to sell an as-is property in St. Anne, and they were selling it for right around 30K. And you know, those things line up. You bug a guy enough, you give him enough keywords, you know, and you stick in his head. So he didn't want to list it. It was just a little house in St. Anne or St. John or somewhere over there off of the Rock Road and 270. So he sent them to me and backed out of the deal but he was going to be the guy to sell it for me. So he sent them to me. I walked it. I looked at it. I used his information at the time to assess it. I know nothing. This is all. I had never even remodeled a kitchen at this time. But I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll buy this house. It's $30,000. I got $30,000. Yeah, it seems like it lines up, right? That's all you need in real estate is money for the ticket price. So I met these ladies at a Denny's. We did a quick claim deed. I had a briefcase. I used to carry around a briefcase at the time because I thought that was what I needed to look cool. So I had like a cashier's check for 30 grand, and we signed a quick claim deed. And I bought this thing in St. John, and that was it. I got into this thing. It took me like 11 months. Long story short, it took me like 11 months to finish this thing. I did way too much. It is like a little slice of St. Peter's and St. John because I laid this thing out, man. Like glass backsplash, tile, everything, granite. I mean, it is. You go over there. It is and still the nicest thing in St. John over there. Had bad information about how much it was worth. Had no idea how to budget for a rehab or what neighborhood cap was or any of that. So long story short, 11 months later, I think we made a resounding like $600 once that deal finally went through, which took a long time.
Yeah.
But you got my foot in the door with that. I had actually purchased a house. I met, a guy named Brian Schroeder from Faster House. Longhorn Investments, Susanna, and I met a bunch of these people throughout this process that realized that I was going to do this one way or the other. And they were, man, so awesome to help me, man. This network, this guy Brian, who sees this kid that is just knows nothing but foot on gas, and I was stupid enough to get into my second deal before I even realized that I had lost completely on my first deal. Right, while the first deal was still going, Brian Schroeder, taught me about hard money. Brought me a second deal, personally brought me a house in St. John, met me there himself, helped me understand so much just on this project, funded it for me. That was probably the biggest risk he had ever taken in business, funding this deal for this kid that's like all gas, no brakes, no knowledge, but he funded it for me. And at the end of that deal, we made 30 grand on that second deal with hard money, funding the rehab, funding the purchase price, helping me navigate the process. We made 30 grand when that one was done, and I was hooked. I had never seen a check that big in my entire life, but I let alone earned it myself. You know what I mean? So once I had done that and I saw the power that my skills had in adding like value to these homes and how I could leverage that, I was hooked. And that was the way I was going to go.
Wow. Dude, I mean, there's so many things there. Well, through all of it, Nick, I mean, it's been fantastic getting to know you, recently. And I think your authenticity really shines through. Like how you said, you don't just hire people for a specific, skill. It's you're trying to get to know that person. And I think clearly a lot of these people saw that in you, and when they took that risk, however big or small it was, that's what they were betting on, is you as the person. So it's awesome to see how leading as a good person and as caring about people can take you far, man.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
uh, I know, and we'll have to do a follow up on this. Like I could dig into so many different areas. One thing that I do want to make sure we really cover for a few minutes here too, you know, being the rehabber yourself, like that's one process that especially newbies, new to DealMachine, if you're trying to do that first deal, especially, could use some guidance on understanding how do you think through rehab, how do you come, if you're going to make an offer on a house, how do you come to what an estimated rehab cost is going to be, like that's obviously can talk for hours on that. There's no quick answer to that, but
Yep.
if you have any kind of initial advice for newbies, for people that are really going through this process, if you could spend a few minutes on that, I think that'd be tremendously valuable for our audience.
Absolutely. So when it comes to assessing the cost of these things, uh, first and foremost, the cost associated is only as good as what you can get it for. So I can sit up here and tell you that I get water heaters for $1,200, and I get cabinet layouts for X amount. But if you don't know my distributor and you're going to Home Depot and you're paying the premium, top end, or you're going to the homeowner designer kitchen and bath store and trying to pick your stuff up, you're going to pay a completely different amount than what I can tell you. So it's more about what you can get it for, right? There is a general like cost across the industry where there's a range of what you can get things for. But I say that to say, network these trades and these guys that are out here providing these services just as much as you network these wholesalers and these financial people, and do your research on wholesale materials, wholesale cabinets, wholesale LVP, flooring, carpet. Line these guys up and get these prices. Have a little notebook. It's just as important to network on the trade side, if not more important, because of how diluted the trade industry is, with contractors out there that you got to weed through to find these quality guys that'll give you a quality number. So network heavy on the front end, and don't buy a house and go into it blind thinking, all right, well, now I'm going to figure out how much all this costs, because that's a bad way to do it. So you want to have some idea of relative costs of things, what you can get them for, just from stores, asking your other investors, networking their wholesalers, going to their cabinet distributor, getting an idea, going to the window roof company, getting an idea. Can you give me a baseline price? Can you give me a gauge? Can you go to a roofer and ask a roofer for a unit of measure on how to assess the cost of a roof. Then he can tell you about a 1,200 square foot, style ranch is about X. And then that way, even if you're, wrong, you're in the ballpark. All this stuff is about getting in the ballpark. Because there's no direction when you go buy the house that it's going to be exactly this amount, right? So heavy networking, getting these skilled trades to give you estimating tips, to give you this as you go through. How much is a water heater from 3 different plumbers? Now, if you get 1,200, 1,500, and 1,800, well, now, use that median. And now you can assess at that median, and that's very helpful. So you get these different trades to give you these tips and these tools and these calculators to help you assess some of these costs, right? And then when you go in to do these things, we break them up into sections. So break your budget up into sections and it becomes much easier to understand. So if you give like the whole house a paint budget, paint, flooring, wall repair, that's normally one of my categories. So that'll give me all my walls repaired, all my walls painted, my flooring down. That's kind of cosmetically updates my box, right? Because what's a house without all the mechanical parts other than just kind of a box? So after that, then you got how many bathrooms, how big, and what's the cost there. Assign a cost associated to each bathroom. So generally in the investment rehab world, I see these standard small size ranch style bathrooms go anywhere from like 3,500 to 5 grand, depending on the size, the style, what you're pulling out, permitting, things like that. Once you get a cost associated with the bathrooms, then like I said, you find out your cabinets and granite cost. Well, for your kitchen, it's relatively easy to cost out appliances and assess kind of the cost of new appliances. So whereas if you try to get this whole house under one cost and one piece of paper, it gets really complicated and overwhelming. If you start to break out a house into some of its different parts and just really focus in on those different parts, and then the costs associated with those different parts, and don't worry about the big picture as much, and then at the end add it all up, right? Because then there's a little bit, if the things go a little bit cheaper once you add them all together, good for you. But you've assessed kind of a retail cost of doing each of the large sections of the home and then put them together. And then by the time you've done 2 or 3 of these, and you see what you've assessed come to fruition, and kind of the pitfalls or the wins in between that, then you start to really get an accurate gauge of what these things are going to cost. So at this point, I can go into a house in 20 minutes and I can figure out whether it's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 grand. But don't get too caught up trying to be, over analyze these things, man. There's no way to get it 100% right on the front end. We've done 300 of these, and not one time have I seen it go exactly the way we anticipated when we bought it. I mean, it's just impossible to get to that. So, go in there, add up the different parts and pieces, put them together, and you can generally come up with a pretty accurate scope and cost assessment.
Yeah, that's a great way to think through the process. I mean, as you're going through that, are there any other big, red flags or big common mistakes? You're like, oh man, it's easy to trip up on this or that, that you've seen over and over again, or?
So there's some big ticket items that are hard to assess. I got a house we've been doing for the last 4 months that I was literally putting on the market next week. That with the rain yesterday, just completely flooded today. I went over there, nothing coming from the exterior, so it's hydrostatic pressure from the ground. So this particular house, with that over excess of water we got, has now revealed groundwater issues. So it needs a drain tile system and a sump pump. So again, that would have been impossible for me to assess, back when everything was frozen in December when I bought the house. So there, structural and foundation stuff, I stay away from that. That's not my specialty. So those are big no-nos for me. Assess your big ticket items. It hurts to be wrong on repair stuff on the interior remodel, but like it really hurts to not have the cost of a full roof in your budget when you've budgeted the rest of the remodel out already. So or full HVAC systems. I've made that mistake myself of liking a deal so much that I almost kind of put blinders on to certain aspects of it. Like, oh, that furnace will probably be okay when we're done. And then we finish, and now it's the middle of summer, it's 102 degrees, and the AC system's not keeping up. And that's $7,500, new furnace and AC condenser outside. And those hits hurt. You know what I mean? An extra month of holding costs, a little extra labor to your guy on the inside. Those are costs that you can eat throughout the process. That they suck, and nobody wants to come out of money they didn't expect. But really, really try to focus in on those big ticket items that are big costs. Because if you put blinders onto those, they hurt when you're trying to get that profit on the back end.
Yeah, I think we definitely said over and over again too, where you can get emotional about a deal and trying to take that out of it and trying to run the numbers and stick to that is tough discipline, but it's one of the most common mistakes we see on our end. So man, I feel bad we're over time, I know, on our end. This has been awesome, man. I mean, I love everything from hearing your story and how you've really, again, flip that switch, but have put in so much. I mean, such an awesome work ethic, and how you really care about people in terms of who you're working with and who you're doing business with. Both inside the company, outside the company. Before I leave, can you tell our audience more around, like, I know you've got the rehab playbook, you've got your boot camp experience, the coaching you've got going on. Like, can you tell people how you are helping other investors today?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about being a rehabber was walking these projects with these new investors and using my experience to really break the process down to an easy to understand uh, kind of a flow. A lot of people, man, they oversell this, they overcomplicate it, they try to flex what they know, so much that it's like I don't even understand what you're saying. So when I got to walk these projects with these new investors and break it down for them, I really had a lot of fun with that. So when we took our construction company off of the general hiring market to do rehabs for other investors, and when we went completely in-house now, so we just work on projects that I purchased, one of the things I wanted to hold on to was that experience of walking those projects with these new investors. So I created the Rehabbers experience, where I bring up to 10 people to two of my full remodel projects. I give you a full spectrum view of the process by bringing you to one house that's completely demoed, opened up, relayed out with a new plan, and a lot of the rough ends already begun. So you get to see what it's supposed to look like behind the walls before you bring the paint and the LVP in there and start slapping it around. Then the second projects we go to, excuse me, is completely finished, staged, on the market, beautiful, hopefully already sold. And we walk that project with poster board size blow up pictures of what it looked like before. So we show those 10 people that we actually do know what we're talking about, and where we came from with a second project. The cool thing is every project's a little different. The two projects we go to are always a little different. The 10 people that walk the project have a little bit of a different idea of what they're looking to get. So it's always a unique experience. It's really more of a hangout than a class. Super laid back. We all have a great time. It's very interactive. It's for the people that don't learn from the books, that really want to go there and they want to kick it before they put their money into it. And we explain every aspect of it. So it's a great time. It's probably my favorite thing that I do these days. Really getting to hang out with people that got that, that switch flipped, and they're looking to do more too. So those are my favorite kind of people.
Fantastic, man. So I'll make sure we link to that in the description here if you guys want to check that out more. Nick, thank you so much for your time again today, man. I mean, can you tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can connect with you?
So we're all over Facebook. That's my main platform where all of our 5-star reviews and all my videos are, at Nick's All Around Improvements LLC. We're also now on Instagram and YouTube, and we have a website in the works that should be coming soon that will link to all our social media platforms. So that'll help people register for the class.
Awesome. We'll link to all those resources here again. But Nick, thank you so much again for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation. So
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.
yeah, absolutely. And to everyone watching, again, this is Matt Kamp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.